I'm your host, one of the co-founders of TCM, Terry Armstrong. I'm really excited about today's show. I got a really good friend on here that I've known for quite a bit, over almost 20 years, a little bit over 20 years now. So I really think it's going to be a really good show, and he's got a lot for you creative types that we tend to plug into in the beauty industry. So he's one of those types, so you can relate. But first order of business, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, TCM Lifestyle. Also follow us on IG at TCM Collection and Facebook. We really appreciate all the support we've been getting. We just want to continue that. But today is a very good day. My guest today is Keith Plummer. He's a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker. Actually, I like this first statement you gave me, Keith, so I'm going to read it verbatim. He is the owner of an independent full-service film and video production company. He specializes in the production of films, documentaries, commercials, promotional videos, and music videos, in-house scripting, producing, directing, shooting, and editing with editing capabilities. He's created, numerous films. The Soul of Athens, A History of the Morton Theaters are one. Before the Memories Fade, Voices from the Civil Rights Movement is another. He's won several awards. The Soul of Athens, A History of Morton Theater, won the 2015 Aurora Award, the platinum level, right, Keith?
Yeah.
And several Telly Awards. He is a long time. I really like the fact that he has a life before filmmaking. He used to cover Capitol Hill and several presidential elections up in DC. I'm assuming he got some dirt that he may or may not can share with us. But once again, Keith, thank you so much for joining us. I guess today is Keith Plummer. Thanks, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm gonna call you T because that's all I call you.
I'm okay with that. I was thinking about this before we got started. I'm like, this is going to be difficult. We know I've been talking about a bunch of BS. What happened in the game this past weekend and stuff like that. So I know you joked about what kind of questions this net sent me over to talk about today. But I think you have a lot to share with our people who watch. I'm really impressed by all the things you've done. If I've never said that before, I mean, the past 20 years that I've known you, you've done quite a bit. And it's quite impressive, and it's always been really good quality. But take a few minutes, and just, tell them a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and what made you the man you are today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm from DC. I was born in DC, grew up in Prince George's County, went to school in Maryland. I guess what led me on this path, and I never knew I was actually going to be on this path, was that as a kid, my family always traveled, and I'm an only child. So I had the camera, and I was always taking pictures and doing the family photos. Before you know it, there's so many pictures that I'm not in. You wouldn't even think that I grew up in the family, because I'm the one that's always behind the camera. So that's that's my job. That was my job. I was like, selfies is a good thing because now I can be in pictures. But that's the way. I mean, I started off. I mean, it's weird. It was something that I always did. I never really thought about it as a career. My big thing was in high school, I was a tennis player, and that was my goal, to be a professional tennis player. Played in college, tried to make the circuit afterwards. It's a hard thing to do, especially back then, being a black guy trying to make it in that sport. But it somewhere along in college, believe it or not, you didn't know this probably. I was a pre-med major. So I actually was a biology major. So it was impossible back then to play a sport and be a science major, because you'd miss all the labs. You'd have to make up the labs, and that was just like impossible. And I fell back on something that I thought was interesting, and that was being was journalism, and I start taking pictures for the school newspaper, then the school yearbook, and then the school paper. So it was the mass comm paper, the school paper, and that's just something I did. And when I got out of school, I started working in a 1 hour photo lab. And then I remember there was the manager, they were given a new management position, and I was like, oh, I worked here longer than that guy. I mean, I know all this stuff. And the manager was like, the owner was like, you're not going to be here long. I was like, what? What do you mean? You gonna tell me I can't be here long? I was making my car payments. That's all I could see was making my car payments. He was like, you're not gonna be here long. This guy was gonna be here. And I remember I went back to school to just try to find a job, and I stumbled upon this place, this new TV station that was opened up in Baltimore, and they wanted interns. So I called them and I said, I'm a graduate. Can I still be an intern? And they're like, come on in. And that I start working in the control room of a TV station. And that's how I started learning how to edit. I learned how to shoot. And for TV, and then my next job, after doing that for 3 years, I got a job in DC at a Washington News Bureau. And then after that, I got a bigger job at a news bureau, and I actually stayed there for 14 years, became a chief photographer, and I just dated myself. Man, I said I wasn't going to do that. and I did that, and it was quite enjoyable for a lot of reasons, but it also, news is straightforward. You aren't allowed to be creative. And I found myself in the later years wanting to be more and more creative. So I got the bug while I told myself one of the goals was to go ahead and make a short film before the end of the year. And it was like December, it was 3 weeks before the end of the year. So I got a bunch of cameramen and people who were in news, and I did this short film called The Truth. And we finished it before the end of the year. We showed it to, our friends and whatnot. And I entered it in a film festival. And believe it or not, it was a finalist in the film festival. Oh, wow. And that was back then when you didn't have all these film festivals. So it was, I caught the bug after that. And I'd say that was a good and bad thing. And we'll get into the good and bad of it. But it allowed me to be more creative. So I did news for a while. But after that, I was more so, I am ready to go on and do more production. That's what I want to do.
Gotcha. And I apologize. I skipped over this very important fact. You just released a new movie.
Oh, we were going to get to it. Don't worry about it.
Okay. But I wanted to make sure, and the movie's called Self Quarantine. And we'll get to it later, but we just went to the premiere a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Week and a half ago. So I'll plug it later, but I'll plug it now as well. If you, he's going to share how you can stream it. Please check it out. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. Kudos to you guys. I mean, you did a really good job with that. So I just want to make sure. While I was top of mind, I'm looking at Self Quarantine 1922 behind you. I said, I forgot to say something about the movie.
Oh, don't worry. I can't do anything now without plugging it. It was going to get plugged.
Gotcha. All right, cool. So thanks for that intro. You kind of hit on some of the points I think you're going to get into a little bit here. One of the things I've always found curious, creatives, a lot of y'all are in the vein that we're in, which is entrepreneurship. You're just on the creative side. So you're trying to create and you're trying to run a business at the same time and mesh all of that. And so I can't imagine all the number of challenges you've had to deal with over especially your filmmaking career. If you can, give us some insight on some of the things you had to overcome.
Well, one thing, especially with the movie Self Quarantined, you have to remember that whatever your production is, it's called show business, right? So when you think of it, it's more so when I generally think, oh, it's pre-production, it's production, it's post-production.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the other side is just the business side, and that is as hard or harder than doing the production. It's trying to get the money for funding, trying to get the distribution, trying to, get it on whatever streaming platform, to get it on whatever theater. It's always a constant battle of trying. There's money. There's always money and legal things that you have to go through to get a film out there. It's that in itself is trying, but the trying to get your daily business to go and coincide with what people think. And I'll say this is lessons I learned when I had my first studio is that, and I'll say this as an example. I used to take pictures, obviously. I used to take pictures still, right? So I do some boudoir shots, or I do whatever, and I had a portfolio. They look at the portfolio and say, oh my gosh, I really like this. I love this shot. And then they say, well, how much would a session cost? And then you tell them how much a session costs. And they'd say something like, well, I could go to Glamour Shots and get that done for $200. And then I'd say, can you tell the difference between, and not trying to be mean, but because the truth of the matter is, if you don't see the difference between me lighting specifically for you and putting you in the best light in here and doing these poses and all that stuff, if you don't see the difference between that and Glamour Shots, then you need to go to that. I'm just using them as an example, but you need to go to them because they're good at what they do. They bring a whole bunch of people in, they shoot the same shot, and they're efficient at it. But you come to me to get a specific kind of look, something that's catered to you, something that brings that. But if you don't see it, then it's wasted. I mean, the same thing happens with creatives. Always have this, and I don't know whether it's in the music industry they have it, but I can imagine. I know artists painters and stuff. They're like, that's nice. Well, how much does it cost? And you're going, well, this is how much it costs. And you're like, well, why is it so much? You don't have that problem when you go to an attorney's office and he says it's $250 an hour. Even if he's giving you the receptionist is giving you a form sheet that all you have to do is sign. You're still paying $250 an hour. Somehow there's a disconnect from the amount of work, mental work, physical work, and creativity that people miss when it's time to pay. That itself is one of the biggest hurdles that every creative has to go through. It's like, why does it cost so much? Or simple, when I do productions, is I say, what's your budget? And I understand people saying, well, I shouldn't tell you my budget, because if I tell you the budget, then you're going to try to, make it go all the way to the budget. But your budget allows me to know what's the turnaround, how much equipment I need, extra people, so in essence, and here's a little cheat sheet for it. When someone says, what's your budget? If they're really about their business, what they're really saying is, what do you know about your project? Because if you say, yeah, I don't know. My real question would be, how many days are we shooting? Where are your locations? What type of crew can you handle? How many mics do you need? It's all these questions that we would have fills in that. It's just easier to say, what's your budget? Because then otherwise you get bombarded with a whole bunch of questions. You say, well, I want to shoot this short film. Okay. Give me a little more. So are you shooting it in one place? You shooting in two places? We got to account for moving from location to location. We got to account for a whole bunch of stuff. That's the kind of things that you run into is people not really understanding what really goes into a production.
Yeah, I guess one as the one of the people sitting on the other side, I've heard horror stories, of people who are not like you, who are really good at their craft,
Mm-hmm.
Asking that question and taking the money, and then then you were like, "This is what I got," and then I run across you. Oh, this is what they did for you. Oh,
Right.
they hoodwinked you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt you have to vet. One of the since there's in the last 15 years there's been a camera revolution, and obviously you know that because now these cameras are in your phone. Yeah. So people are doing stuff with their phones. But when they start making cameras that shoot high def in DSLRs, regular cameras, a lot of people got into the business. A lot of people who didn't know what they were doing got into the business. But the more you shoot, for most people, the more you shoot, the better you get. And hopefully that's what happens. But there is definitely a hierarchy. There are things that I look at, things that I aspire to have. Like even with my last movie, no movie is perfect. So there are things that I want to do. There are things that I wanted to do with that movie that I wasn't able to do. But there is, in this hierarchy, you have to understand that people's experience matters. So one person might say, "Oh yeah, I could do it. I could do that for $1,000," and another person says, "Well, that's really a $1,700 job at the least." It probably is a $1,700 job. This other person is just trying to get the job.
Yeah, I as on the business side, for TCM, I can use it as an example. One of the things and all companies go through this is just the volume of content needed. So I've $5,000 for one piece of content compared to $5,000 for 10 pieces of content.
Right.
I have to weigh that because the mind share of the people out there,
right?
It's thumb. They scroll through,
right?
And so I'm like, how much use am I going to get out of this content? And I'm always trying to weigh that as an owner. I'm always trying to weigh that value. But I have for example, like I told you before, I've seen your movie and I've seen some other garbage that's on Amazon already or Netflix. I'm like, Keith stuff look a whole lot better than that. And I know they probably had at least whatever X number of dollars for a budget. And so we're always, I know I am always trying. I'm like, I need to get the best quality stuff I can. I know it's not cheap. That's the funny thing. It's different when I think it's a different mindset for us on this side is some people think you can get it for cheap. I'm not one of those people. I know it costs to get quality stuff. It's just that I got to decide, all right, I got to spend the money now because it's affecting my brand image. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, but it's also, I think, and it's going to sound weird, but I think we have gotten used to, as a society, just things not looking as good. And I think that's what's happened. I mean, I remember there are things that we used to wouldn't be able to put on the air because, I'd complain. I say, you can't put that on. You can't, that you see now on TV or you see people streaming it or all this stuff. And you're just like, man, that would never fly before. I actually think that as a society, we've gotten used to just almost like people when you're on Instagram, people, they just, they put stuff up and people are just like, okay, well, that's cool. Whether the sound's good or the sound's not good, people put up with a little bit. If it's not, and I find this, if it's not a longer event, like if your IG is generally under a minute, then you go to their other thing. But if you're listening to something and it's got a whole bunch of static and you can barely hear the person, after about 3 minutes, I think everybody's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Why are we listening to this? If it's not some kind of surveillance tape that you're, you weren't supposed to know in the first place. But that gets, I mean, because it gets tiring, because you're like, can I hear what's going on? So I just think that that's what, as a society, we've just gotten used to seeing people and hearing things that, as long as it's a short period of time, we're okay with it. We don't care if the video is moving and jumping up and down for a little while. I just think that that's where society is going, and I know that's one of your questions later. But
Yeah.
I think that's where we're headed, is everybody looks to their phone as the medium. That's what we're using.
Yeah. That's funny you say that, because I find myself a lot of times I'll go into the room to watch some TV and I'll grab my phone, and the next thing you know, I've been there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes looking at stuff on my phone before I even turn the TV on, because you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of get sucked in, and and by the time I'm done with looking at whatever's on my phone, you know what? I'm like, I get up and leave, and I forego the experience that that I went in there for.
Yeah, this is something that that I came across that I really thought was very interesting to keep up with our time now. Is that kids look at their phones, they see that 5-inch screen, so when they go to a 50-inch TV, that's like going to the theater. So we're from generations where we looked at the TV, and going to the theater was the big thing. But the theater was a big social event. The theater was, you get to see it, and it's huge and surround sound. Well, I think we were heading towards where we're going now anyway. It's just that with the pandemic, we've hit it faster. I mean, streaming services has gotten everybody to just watch stuff at home. So people were already building their home theaters. They were getting their surround sound at home and sitting in their big, nice, fluffy chair or whatever kind of chair they wanted, and streaming stuff, or they were watching Blu-rays for a while. Now they're streaming stuff. Now, since the theaters were pretty much shut down last year, or 2020, they're having a hard time getting people back. They're never going to get back to the way they were. I don't know if they ever will, because we have those phones, and most teenagers watch the phone. They don't watch that. When they go to their computer, it's only because they had to be on the computer for something else. As anyone they know, as my kid says, the computer basically is the phone. Where's your computer? Is the phone, because basically that's what it's used for. How many people actually call? Everybody texts.
That's a good point.
My mom says, "Did you talk?" She said, "How are my boys doing? Did you talk to them?" And I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Not texting. Did you talk to them?" I was like, I have a list of people who I actually talk to. Okay. You're on that list, by the way.
Hey, I know. Every time I text you, you call me. I've noticed that.
The list of people that I will text. But come on now, there's some people you talk to.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to get to my questions. I don't want to lose sight of them. I know you got some answers for them.
I thought I got away from that.
I do want to ask this question though. As a creative that you are, like you hear it. I'll use this example in music. I went to a concert one time. I won't name the artist, but his catalog, the songs he wrote that he recorded on the album. Everybody wanted to hear them and hear them that way. He's such an artist that when he came on stage, he played what he felt like playing that night. And he sung the version of the song the way he wanted to hear it. Right. And some people felt a little bit disappointed. I wonder, for you as a creative, do you ever get into that internal battle about, the audience seems to be liking this kind of genre, this type of stuff, but this is the vision I got right now. How do you manage that?
Yeah, so I've been the last few years I've been doing nothing but documentaries on little known African American stories, and it's played in schools and it's played in museums and that kind of thing. That kind of documentary doesn't really make money. So as a creative, you have to balance between things that you really feel needs to be done and things that are going to keep you afloat. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this Self-Quarantined I wrote in 2020 when everything shut down for the productions pretty much for the whole year. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it with certain things in mind, like keeping a small crew and keeping a small cast because of COVID and all this stuff, and trying to be able to do that. But I also wrote it so that, and I edited it the way that it would invite all kinds of people to look at it. So you wouldn't think it's just a girls' trip, because there are things in the movie that that other people would feel drawn to or would like. So that's one of the things that that you always have to balance out, is trying to figure out what's in your heart and what works. No film is going to make everybody happy. I mean, my prime example when I talk in workshops is, look, you could have the best movie and have everybody like it in the room. Everybody will probably have a different part of the film that they like. Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, I thought that was great. Someone said, no, I thought this part was better. That was all right. But yeah. Or same thing, you have people who dislike a film and they're like, yeah, but that part right there, that car crash was cool. I mean, you're never going to make everyone happy. So if you come out with a movie and people say it's an A minus, B plus, that's a great movie, because for going across the scale, you've done a good job, because there's just groups of people that you'll never reach. So your object is to always try to find your audience and try to reach your audience. The same thing in music. When I used to do music, it was always, we got followers out there. We just got to find them. They could be in Sweden. Haven't you heard about people who are like, your record was #1 in Denmark, and then they fly and go to Denmark because you don't care where you would like for it to be more popular here, but if you're a hit in Denmark, you go to Denmark. So I'm like with Self-Quarantined, I'm like, if you're a hit in any part of Africa, France, Europe, anywhere, that's where we're going. That's where we're going.
All right, cool. One of the things I was thinking about with this pandemic is, like you hit on it a little bit. You had to think about a lot of different things to get a film made in this environment. But I mean, I think, well, I guess my question is, you can't be static as a creative. You're constantly evolving. You're constantly taking a look at what's going on in the world and trying to create a project that can speak to what's going on. And sometimes it requires some evolution on your part, because you got to see things through your own lens, but what's going on, right? So how do you approach that, where I would say this is a very unique time frame, a new normal.
Yeah.
We're trying to get back to things being normal, but even I would think the new way of doing business in the film industry is really different than it was before, in terms of getting all the people together, being able to do it safely and do it profitably.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll take that in two stances. One would be that when production shut down in 2020, not only did I write Self-Quarantined, but there's an aspect in post-production that I took on, and that was learning how to be a colorist. And that's learning how to color grade. That's a person who a colorist actually enhances the film. It's not like color correction, which just makes the colors correct from whatever log it was. color grading actually helps with the mood. It brightens the colors, or it can highlight a person saying something or do something, like making everything darker and lighter in that spot, but you don't really notice how it got dark, or how you don't focus on that it's dark. You just know that you were pointed in that direction. And though I practiced that, and that was one of the things I had a chance to do. And it actually, during the film, it saved me thousands of dollars, because I was actually able to learn how to do that in such a way that I was able to use it. Not, I'm not the world's best, because people have been doing it for years and years and years, but it definitely worked, and it's definitely saved thousands of dollars. This whole moving towards platforms in the industry, I think, is where we're going as a film community. It's that we used to call it four-walling, which means they used to take your film and go to a theater. You pay to rent the theater, and then you'd sell tickets, and people would come see your movie in that location, in that city. So if we were four-walling in Atlanta, we'd rent a movie theater, let everybody know, they'd come to see it. Then we do the same thing in DC, the same thing in Baltimore, and that's what we're doing. Platforms are allowing you to control your own image now. So platforms, once you get to a point, you can say, all right, I have this film, I have this documentary, I have these other shows, and now we want to get subscriptions. And that's how you're going to get your stuff. If you want to control your stuff, that's how you get your stuff out. Because when you go, people used to always ask me this all the time, and they still do. It's like, whoa, why isn't it on Netflix? Well, just using Netflix as an example, Netflix or any of those streamings, Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon Prime, they take a large percentage of what's made. So I would always say to people, how many movies are on Netflix? And you'd say, a couple of hundred, whatever, right? Well, how much do you think each director makes off of that if you're only spending $20 a month?
Oh.
Right. So if your project isn't greenlit from that company, Netflix or Hulu or whatever, then you're not making optimum dollars. What you're making is pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
So that's why platforms, getting your own streaming service, is going to be the way to go. And we'll see what happens, because the movie theaters, the movie companies have now starting to push everything into the platforms, because they know people aren't going to the theaters. So you'd see on the same day this movie is in the theater, this new movie's in the theater, it's also being streamed. And they're charging you and the reason I understand why they're charging you $29 or $30 is because you could be packed, your house could be packed with people, and they're only getting $20. So, the industry is changing a lot, especially with the platforms, with the streaming, but more importantly, just people and their cell phones and the content. Everybody's making content. Whether it's good or bad content doesn't really seem to matter to a lot of people. It's just content. So that's what's changing.
Okay. All right. I mean, I agree with that 100%. I think one of the things it's funny you bring, because I was just thinking about this one. I was about to watch something the other night, and I'm like, I can wait 2-3 more weeks and it'll be free on the platform. You know what I mean?
It used to be 6 months. Remember, stuff used to come to HBO. Exactly. It would be 6 months after it left the theaters, and now it's the same time. They have to figure out what they're going to do, and they're starting to figure that out. But along with that is, as an independent, you can't be squeezed out, and you have to figure a way how to make money yourself.
Yeah. I know we're getting close to the time limit, but I do want to hit you up with this one. what is next for Plum? Well, let's talk about self-quarantine. I know we said we were going to talk about it later. Let's talk about that, and give people the 2-minute. Hey, this is what this is about, and then
so in our business, they say it's the elevator pitch, because you walk into the elevator, some big time producer, you come in there and you gotta hit them. All right, so it's I'll say this, it's different because it's 3 African American women leads in the movie. It's a sci-fi thriller. It's 3 women go to the woods trying to get away from the COVID situation. They just want to go on a retreat. And while they're there, strange things start to happen to make them question their grip on reality. That's what the movie's about. It's an interesting mix and an interesting way things are done. And it's fun. And it's, from what the audience is telling me, it's definitely a thriller. So, it's done. And I'll tell you, tooting my own horn, it is definitely well made. It is not you would think it was a big time budget.
I will co-sign on that. I will the quality that you put out there, I was impressed. You told me what the budget was.
and nobody gets to know the budget.
Yeah, but I know you did a lot, and it looks great. I mean, I've heard other people say that the cinematography and all the shots and all the different things you were doing, really good stuff. So kudos for that, man.
We start streaming this weekend, so expect Self-Quarantined. If you go to selfquarantinemovie.com, self-quarantined with a D, past tense, selfquarantinedmovie.com. Okay, and you'll be able to check it out. We'll be streaming.
Cool. All right. Before we get out of here, anything else you want to share with the audience, or about your new projects or anything coming up?
Well, we're definitely this year we're definitely doing this movie that I wrote years ago as part of an experience that I had, but it's a creepy movie. It's called Keep Right, but it's definitely coming out. And we've been working on this web series called The Hip Hop Naturalist. Did I ever show you any of that?
You did.
Hip Hop Naturalist. It's like a black Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. We spent for one of the shows, we spent a week in the Everglades and catching Burmese pythons that were an invasive species. So we got them doing that. We also got them catching alligators, and actually I put a GoPro on his chest as he climbed on the alligator. So he sat on the alligator. And then with this called the hip hop, part of it is we interview hip hop artists. And for our first show, we have Dougie Fresh. So Dougie is part of it. But Hip Hop Naturalist will be coming out. We have Keep Right, and most definitely Self-Quarantine will be coming to your town. We're coming to a lot of cities to do what we did here.
Gotcha.
And actually 4 Wall. Now I know what it is.
Okay. And let me know the cities. TCM was we were really appreciative of being a part of it here. So if we're in the city, we'd love to try to be a part of it there as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, most definitely.
Hey, tell them how they can follow you on social.
Okay. On Twitter, I'm at Cinemaker, and on IG, I am Self-Quarantined Movie, and Plumgood Productions, and I'm Keith Benjamin. Productions, and
okay,
that you'll find me there.
Okay, cool. Once again, man, really thank you. Really appreciate it. Not just you being on the show, but just being a good friend. But I really think, I know quite a few people who live in the creative space in the industry now from my side. And I know they got some value out of some of the stuff you shared today. So really thank you for coming on today, man. I really appreciate that. For everyone else, once again, please follow us on YouTube, TCM Lifestyle. Follow us on IG and Facebook at TCM Collection, and on Pinterest at TCM Lifestyle. Hey man, till next time. Next project, we got to have you back on.
All right, man.
All right.
Self-quarantine.
Self-quarantine. Please stream it. Starting streaming this weekend.
That's right.